Governor, you just completed your State of the State address. Thanks for joining me for this. In that address, you mentioned 60% of people 70 and older have been vaccinated.
As of today, yes.
I know you want 70%.
We do.
So the people 70 and older are now competing with a larger pool, 65 to 69, teachers, childcare workers. We did a story yesterday on a 96-year-old who was struggling to find an appointment. Why not direct people giving vaccines to look at their appointment logs and move people 70 and older to the front of the line ahead of younger people?
So first of all, we're thrilled that today 60% of Coloradans 70 and up have at least received their first vaccination. And we will reach our goal, I'm confident, of 70% by the end of February. I would add that we hope more than 70% of people over age 70 want it. Across the whole population, we model that it'll probably be somewhere around 70%, which will end the pandemic. But particularly for those in their 60s and 70s, I really encourage everybody to get the vaccine. If you're 65 and up, you're eligible today. We would love to see those numbers 80, 85%, Marshall. And I did hear that thankfully the woman that you found was able to get her vaccine. And it is simply a numbers question, and this is the tough part. We get now about 100,000 vaccines a week in our state. It had been a little bit less than that in the past, and it's slightly above that this week, but roughly 100,000. 588,000 Coloradans are age 70 and up. 288,000 Coloradans are age 65 to 69. So it is frustrating because not everybody can get it day one, week one. But if you are 70 and up, you'll have the opportunity to get it within the next 2 weeks by the end of February. If you're 65 to 69, it might take an additional week, but we hope to be there by that second week in March.
If the state can punish a pharmacy for perhaps giving vaccines to a population that doesn't require it right now, why doesn't the state step in and say, you have to prioritize these people ahead of younger audiences?
So first of all, there are many systems, and many of the large hospitals are of course notifying their older patients before they notify people in the 65 to 69, and that's we are very supportive of them doing that. But for most of our providers, there's simply not enough people age 70 and up to fill up the entire vaccine roster left. So in some places it will, and sometimes it will, and that's great. But the reason that we had to expand it to 65 to 69 is because we don't want the limit on availability to slow down the delivery. Look, there's no perfect way to do it, but we would rather have frustrated people who wait a week or two than not enough people to take every available vaccine every day that we run at clinics. So we'd rather get every vaccine into an arm, even if it's a 67-year-old or 65-year-old, than wait until that last 20 or 30% of people over 70 get it.
Helping get vaccines into arms could be achieved through a centralized site, and a web developer built a centralized website for pharmacy vaccine appointments. I think you replied to his post on Reddit asking if you could share it. But during the 9 News town hall, you said we didn't need a single point of contact for vaccines because the most vulnerable already had relationships with hospitals. You want to share this programmer's program. Why doesn't the state have a centralized site for people to sign up for vaccines?
So what he did is not a centralized site to sign up. It scrapes availability and provides links to a number of other sites that you then go to set up an appointment. The appointments are set up by private providers. The state didn't want to get in the way of that very personal relationship that people have with your pharmacy, with your hospital, with your community health clinic. And frankly, as most people over 70 who got the shot in Colorado, they didn't even need to sign up. Why? Because they were already known because they had been to the hospital for something. Maybe they'd been to UC Health or Centura or Community Health Clinic, and they were able to proactively notify everyone in their database in a randomized way, along with anybody who signed up, that they were eligible. So rather than start from zero, which if we had started a list, it would have had 0 people on it, and people would have had to find out about it and sign up. We actually started with about 80% of people over age 70 already on a list to get the vaccine, whether they knew it or not. And they would get that link, and many people over 70 did, and they signed up and did it. And then for those who didn't have a medical home, that's where they're going out on their own. And I think sites like this are very, very helpful to find a pharmacy near you, or many of them are also on lists of people like UC Health and Centura. And I understand those are moving much quicker now, especially for people over 70, but also for people 65 to 69.
Could the state create a scrape-like website?
The state could, but I think that the procurement laws of the state would probably mean it would take months and millions of dollars. So it's much better that volunteers stepped up and got it done. It's very simple technology. It's a wonderful service to the community, and I want to thank the coders and creators who made it happen.
Last week, the Deputy Director of Unemployment Insurance said the unemployment payment system is not without its challenges, but, quote, overall, it's a thoroughly significant success. At the time, 70,000 plus eligible claimants weren't receiving payments. Would you call that a thoroughly significant success?
So first, I want to make sure that people who have UI benefits that they've earned know that they will get those benefits. This is not a question of anybody missing out on benefits. Now, that is not a lot of consolation to people who are living paycheck to paycheck. If those benefits are delayed 3 weeks or 4 weeks, yes, they're made whole, but what are you going to do for those 3 or 4 weeks? Colorado had an outdated legacy system that we inherited. It would have taken a very long time to program in any new benefit. Frankly, the delay in the federal UI plus up caused a commensurate delay, not just in Colorado, but across the whole country. Now we have a more dynamic system, meaning when there are new federal changes, and I think there will be through this budget reconciliation bill and President Biden's plan, those will be able to be entered into the system in a much more rapid fashion to make sure the benefits get out quickly. But I also want to make clear, nobody will lose any benefits that they've earned. They will all get the full amount that they deserve.
And you mentioned that last week to the Colorado Municipal League, and I got a response that seemed tone deaf.
Yeah.
Who's been held accountable for the failures with the unemployment system?
Well, first of all, I acknowledge that part too. I said that's little consolation to people that knowing that they will get everything they're owed, but they're going to get it 3 or 4 weeks late, because what do you do during those 3 or 4 weeks when rent is due? It's very, very difficult. So it's not in any way belittling that, but it is important to point out that you're not talking about anybody losing their benefits. They're delayed a matter of weeks, and that's very tough on a lot of Coloradans who are out of work. This is a large rebuild of the system that came at an inopportune time, in the sense that there's no opportune time for something like this, but to deploy the new system in the middle of the crisis, at least for going forward, we'll have a functional system where new changes can be implemented rapidly and checks can go out quickly. But the transition itself has caused a lot of difficulty. So if that had been delayed further, then likely new changes, like with the Biden aid bill for unemployed that we expect will likely be signed by the president at some point in March, that would have taken a long time to implement if we had tried to patch together the old system. So I think we're all grateful as Coloradans going forward that we have a much more dynamic unemployment system that can now move much more rapidly to get needed help out.
So it's technical, not administrative. Nobody needs to be punished for this. It's all technical glitches?
Well, it's not a glitch. It's a transition from one system to the other. I've as you know, ran large IT concerns at companies, and proflowers.com, where we had enormous Valentine's Day and Mother's Day volume, and it was always very challenging. When you migrate systems, it's always a difficult transition for a few weeks. It would have been worse to delay the transition, because then we would be delayed with a new round of checks that will need to go out in March. So do I have the confidence going forward the checks will get out expeditiously with the new system? I absolutely do. Is it unfortunate that this transition occurred during the biggest pandemic in the century? Yes, it is very unfortunate, but that would have been worse had we delayed that and tried to put duct tape on the old system over the next few months.
I'll wrap with this, and I know Republicans would rather me be here longer, because they would joke the longer you're with me, the longer you can't write another executive order. You know I like math. You've done more than 300 executive orders. 60 of them are fresh. The most of them are amending or extending the other 60. Now that the legislature's back, you just spoke to them. Are you done being the executive branch and the legislative branch?
Well, executive orders by their nature are short-term, as you indicated. So some of them, like how we deal with hospital surge capacity, making sure we're able to transport patients who need it to where they need it. These are come up within 30 days. Many of the actions have involved suspending statutes, like remove barriers to people being able to practice in medicine for the medical surge, allowing learning pods to occur. Even small things, like there was one that temporarily allowed for food trucks to offer food to truckers at truck stops. So those all expire within 30 days. Some of them are good ideas that we hope that Republicans and Democrats in the legislature take up. They already did some, like telehealth. I hope they do a similar one around televeterinary medicine, which we now have on emergency order, but that expires in 30 days, and we can renew it during the pandemic. But if we want to do things like this permanently, if we want to create, that's really what my speech today challenged them to do, we want to create a new normal that's better than before, by all means, take the best of some of those temporary measures that allow for, televeterinary medicine, telehealth, remove regulations that get in the way of small family pods for childcare, and make them the law of Colorado so they don't expire when the pandemic and the emergency end.
We're out of time.
Thanks, Scott.
Marshall, it's so nice to see you.
And you.
See you